Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Oh, man, 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 oh, man. I got to tell you, this has been a week that has made me question a lot of things in this world. And this has been a week where I feel like we have once again seen what happens when front office executives are just lost, dazed, confused, have no clue what's happening at any given time. I just watched Daryl Morey's press conference from earlier today. I got to watch it in its entirety. And we're going to talk about what Daryl Morey had to say about why he traded Jared McCain and why nothing else came to fruition. And I think it's actually pretty simple. I'm going to tell you, when it comes to the Philadelphia 76ers,
they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
That is the truth. Because boy, oh boy, what an absolute disaster class. Daryl Morey has taken himself from, I would already say the outhouse. You know, sometimes you say from the house to the outhouse. No. He was already in the outhouse. And now his entire methodology needs to be taken to the landfill. What an unbelievable disaster of a press conference today. And we're going to break it all down. So don't worry. We're going to break it all down on today's show. We also have to have a conversation about your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. There's a rumor swirling that they may be, they meaning the Flyers, may be open to getting real frisky this offseason and maybe even moving off of a guy like an Owen Tippett or maybe even a Travis Konecny. I don't know if I believe any of that, but it's out there. I went and got a coffee today, by the way, a little bit ago, which I don't usually do at this point because I'm happy with my espresso machine. But I've run out of espresso beans, and instead of going out and buying more, my wife apparently signed me up for an espresso of the month club, which I'm actually very excited for because I'm a simple guy to entertain, and I love me a little bit of espresso beans. By the way, other things that I love before we get into the sports talk, an avid listener to the show who will remain nameless unless they would like me to name them at some point, sent me a DM over on Instagram today, sent me a photo. You might be saying to yourself, Russ, you shouldn't be talking about DMs you receive on Instagram. Oh, no, this is a good one. Apparently, Sheets in Limerick is very close to being ready. And I've been told that it's officially going to open next Thursday. Now, I know that's been kind of going around, but if you're in the greater Limerick area and you're waiting, not Limerick over across the pond. If you're living in Limerick, I got no news for you. There's no Sheets coming to you. The only sheets you get are the ones in your pants after a long night of drinking. But if you're in Limerick, PA, next Thursday apparently is when we are going to finally get the sheets. Now, am I going to be doing a live show from Sheets? Probably not, but maybe. I don't know. I might have to have a conversation with somebody over at Sheets. Would it be a lot of fun to do a live show at Sheets? It would be. Would I like to maybe sample a few things like jalapeno poppers, mac and cheese bites? Yeah, I would. Could I do fantastic work for the fine folks at Sheets? Yes, I could. Will I? I don't know. But hello to everybody. I hope everybody's having a great time. And we'll get into the Sixers. We have to talk about the Flyers. But we have a big Olympic story. We touched on it last night over on Snow the Goalie, but there are some cheating tactics being used by ski jumpers that I find absolutely mind-blowing. We'll talk about those towards the end of the show for those who maybe have kids in the car or near their device. None of it's wildly inappropriate. However, there are a couple of things that make you go, huh. And then also we all have to have a conversation about good old-fashioned Jeff Stoutland, who, left the team, had a really nice public statement to the fans. But I think part of it is who he didn't thank that maybe became a story of its own. Oh, and by the way, there's a rumor floating out there that one or both of Landon Dickerson and or Lane Johnson could retire this offseason. Everything's just great. Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. But I do have to say, before we get into everything on today's show, and I know we're kind of all over the place right now, but that is part of a fantastic Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. We kind of go all over the place. I put something out on Twitter a little bit earlier today. We are currently at 1,952 subscribers as of 3:05 in the afternoon on Friday, February 6th, the year of our Lord 2026. Now, I'm not saying that if you've been watching this show for days, weeks, months, or even the better part of a year and haven't subscribed yet, that you are disappointing me. But I will point out that, yes, that is at least slightly disappointing. Because I get the numbers on how many people who watch each episode and the percentages of how many people are subscribers and aren't subscribers. And, like, subscribers are fine. But there's, like, I don't know, 3/4 of the people who watch certain episodes are not subscribers yet. It costs you nothing. I'd like to get to 2,000. I just think it would be fun to say, like, we got to 2,000 subscribers, everybody. High fives all around. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the, what am I supposed to say? Hit the like, share, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified whenever we go live with an episode. It has been about, I don't know, just over a year of growth here at the Russ Joy Show. We look forward to keeping that going. And if we can hit 2,000 by February, then you know what? Nick Abe might not be wrong. Maybe we'll get to 5,000 this year. I'd just like to get to 2,000 first. I'd be happy with 2,000. Ford says that he counts as at least 10 subscribers. I don't know why Ford hasn't created 10 separate accounts and had all of them sign up as subscribers for this show, but this is where we're at. So we have a lot to do, and I will try to get to as many comments and things as I can today. And I know that there are a lot of you who are here because, you know, we happen to talk a lot about the Flyers, and we will. But, if you're a Flyers fan and you've been feeling down about things, I'm about to make you feel so much better about your existence. I'm about to make you feel so much better about the Flyers front office and the Sixers front office, because Daryl Morey had an absolute disaster class of a press conference today. How bad was it, Russ? Well, it was so bad, and I don't know if this is like intentional or not, but this press conference is so bad that it is an unlisted video on YouTube. Like, if you followed the workflow from Twitter to the Sixers website to YouTube, the Daryl Morey press conference was technically, at least as of like a half hour ago, an unlisted video on the Sixers account. Now, there could be myriad reasons why. Maybe they're going to cut off like the big gap in the front where they were waiting for him to arrive or whatever. And maybe they're going to put out like a fully synthesized Daryl Morey clip where it's just his availability. Or maybe it's unlisted because it was a disaster class. It was truly a disgrace. And it didn't help any of the narratives around Daryl Morey's team. I don't even know where to start because Morey had to come out, right? The NBA trade deadline was putrid for the Sixers. We saw moves getting made all across the league. I'm not saying that the Sixers should have been involved in any of this, but we saw a Darius Garland for James Harden swap between the Clippers and the Cavs. We saw Anthony Davis get moved from Dallas to Washington for a very unimpressive package, like wildly unimpressive package. And it seems like Dallas just wanted to get off the Anthony Davis contract more than like wait until the offseason and go get what might have been the best value. We saw star players, some of them aging, but some star players get moved. We saw other players get moved in this league where, listen, I don't know how many moves are fundamentally going to change how things in this wide open Eastern Conference are going to go. I don't know how many of these things are actually going to help a lot of the Western Conference teams. The Warriors had long been rumored to be interested in Giannis. That didn't happen. Ultimately, Milwaukee pulls back, says we're not trading Giannis, and Milwaukee's delusional enough, I guess, to think that they can build a team this offseason that could compete next year, all while trying to tank, I guess, the rest of this season. Zubac went to Indiana. So that was a move that will help Indiana next year, especially with a high draft pick this year and Tyrese Halliburton coming back. So like that felt very much like a move for next year. And he's not going to make Indy so good that they're going to like get out of the basement or near it in terms of NBA draft lottery odds. So there were moves made, and the Sixers made two moves. We know about the Jared McCain move. We talked about it on Wednesday's show. They moved Jared McCain, who last year looked like he was going to be the rookie of the year until he had a knee injury. And then you come into this past offseason, and among the guys that were featured in the release of like the black jerseys, the alternate jerseys, the throwback to the Iverson era, well, you saw a lot of Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. Jared McCain was featured. And Jared McCain's gone. They got a first-round pick that'll be a late first unless the Rockets totally puke all over themselves, and 3 second-round picks. And at the time, I was like, this is a questionable move. I mean, if they felt like in their heart of hearts, Jared McCain was never going to get back to being the same player he was before the knee injury, before the thumb injury that he suffered in the offseason or preseason or whatever, before the season got underway, if they truly felt like he was never going to regain that form from last year, from the first half of his rookie season, then getting a first-round pick isn't inherently bad. And getting 3 second-round picks, even though it feels like the Sixers just like to sell those for money that can, I don't know, maybe help a legal defense team at some point. Who knows? Who's to say? I wouldn't say that. I'm just throwing out that they're, they've been selling off second-round picks. I thought about it a little bit, and I think on Wednesday's show, the thought here was it's a really bold move to make, and you better hope that those picks are going to get packaged together for something that helps now. Because if you remember, before the NBA trade deadline, Joel Embiid publicly said something to the effect of, I know that usually we, try to avoid the tax or whatever, but the vibes are really good here, and it would be nice to see us make a move to help make this team better. Okay, so they traded away Jared McCain. And then right before the deadline, they traded away Eric Gordon, who played no role here, okay? And then the Sixers went out and did nothing, walked away with nothing. So Joel Embiid comes out before the deadline and says, I hope that we add to our team. I hope that we don't just try to duck the tax, the luxury tax. I hope that we make a move to help this team this year. And on aggregate, right, when it comes to what will help this team right now this year, the Sixers removed Jared McCain and Eric Gordon, but really Jared McCain from the equation. That's how they made the team better. Oh, and by the way, they chose not to make any additional moves, knowing that Paul George is still suspended more than 20 games. He was given that 25 game suspension for violating the anti-substance abuse policy, which he claims was for a mental health medication that he did not get approved properly. So they knew Paul George was going to be out for 20-plus games. They knew that things felt like they were gelling before the Paul George suspension, and they removed Jared McCain from the equation. Okay. Daryl Morey had the opportunity today to explain exactly what went wrong. And he explained something. And I'm going to hit you with a few different clips. I'm going to give a shout out to Aaron Grugan, who writes for Liberty Ballers, because Aaron clipped up this Daryl Morey press conference. So a big thank you to Aaron. I want to throw out, though, to some of the most notable things that were said by Daryl Morey, because this is next level idiocy on full display. Here's Daryl Morey talking about the Jared McCain trade and why they ultimately decided to make it.
With Jared, because we're playing well, we were trying to upgrade the team and add to the team now.
Okay, so they removed Jared McCain from the equation. They traded Jared McCain away because they were trying to make the team better, presumably to add an asset. They didn't think that Jared McCain was a bad dude or a bad player. Okay.
That was goal number one. Obviously, no deal materialized, including using the picks we got from the Jared deal. We were trying to, that's why we did that move a little early. We're trying to reuse.
Hold on a second. Wait. Hey, time out there, Daryl. Hold on. So to recap, goal number one was to trade Jared McCain to try to get assets to make the team better this year. That was goal number one. Well, you got nothing, so goal number one failed. Okay. And then he notes that the reason they made the McCain move for the first round pick in 3 seconds was in theory to use those picks to help make that move to make the team better, which again, spoiler alert, they didn't make another move. Okay. Back to Daryl.
Use those draft picks to add now. We do feel like this deal sets us up better in the future, but
They made the early trade of Jared McCain to get the picks that could help them make a move to be better now. But since it didn't materialize, they think those picks are going to help the Sixers be a better team in the future. Okay. A lot of bending yourself into a pretzel to make this make logical sense, but okay.
We understand that we were looking to add now, and nothing materialized. So
that is true.
Jared,
okay, so nothing materialized. So to recap, you traded away a guy who was a Rookie of the Year favorite halfway through last season, who admittedly shot under 39% from the field this season. I won't gloss over that, but who has looked significantly better in recent games. You traded off that guy a day before the deadline, specifically so that you would have additional assets that you could then try to flip to be a better team. Okay, what you're going to find here, as I play a couple more clips, is that there is going to be some backpedaling and some backtracking, because that doesn't line up with what you're about to hear. So, all right, we got that part done. Okay. Kyle Neubeck pushed back from PHLY Sixers. He pushed back on this idea of them supposedly selling high, about this idea that the Sixers made the trade at the right time and that it was the right time to move off of Jared McCain. Well, don't worry, guys. Daryl Morey is the smartest guy in the room, and he just wants to reassure you that if you thought to yourself, hey, it would make sense to wait until the offseason to move Jared McCain, don't make a move to make your team worse in the hopes that it'll get better. Daryl Morey, here you go.
No, I appreciate that perspective. I am quite confident we were selling high. Yeah. Obviously, time will tell.
Fuck me. The condescension. Look at the facial.
No, I appreciate that perspective.
I appreciate that perspective. That is Daryl Morey saying, Kyle Neubeck, shut the hell up, okay? Bold.
I'm quite confident we were selling high.
Quite confident we were selling high. At one point in the press conference, he does say that there were other teams that got involved. So maybe this was the best deal for Jared McCain. I would tend to believe that if there were multiple teams offering you things for Jared McCain, that, I mean, unless it was the Knicks or somebody who were trying to get him for a better package, I would like to believe that trading him to a Western Conference team, that could be very well what the best offer was right now. Again, was it the right time? Well, Daryl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Daryl Morey's confident he made the right deal at the right time. Okay. Not ideal, but fine. Okay. Let's go back to Daryl again, because this is where the logical bending of your body and your brain has to try to work, and we're all going to come out of this looking like a pretzel. Here's Daryl talking a little bit more about Jared McCain and about his inability to help them short term, right? He viewed Jared McCain as a longer term helping piece, but not as somebody who would necessarily help now, but then, well, you'll see.
To do the Barlow move to get him on a good long-term deal because of the first.
They're talking about the Dominic Barlow contract. If you remember, it was a two-way deal, and the thought was that they might have made this move in part so that they could offer him a full NBA contract, right? But then they traded Eric Gordon, and if memory serves me correct, they could have simply just traded Eric Gordon and still been able to offer Dominic Barlow that full NBA contract. They didn't need to move off Jared McCain for this, but all right, we'll continue.
Apron, we had to do moves to create that opportunity, but that wasn't the primary reason for the Jared deal. We felt that we see Jared as someone who is more likely to help a team in the future. I think that's fairly obvious. I think he has a bright future. We thought that the draft picks we got will help us more in the future and could have helped us this deadline in terms of it was the picks we got were offered to many teams, and nothing materialized for a player that we thought could move the needle with those picks now. But
okay, so Jared McCain, who was a really strong rookie last year, looked like he was coming back into form. He's a player who could have helped them in the future, not as much now. They got the picks, which now can also help them in the future, but he thought would help them now. Well, they clearly aren't going to help them now, so now we are looking at future again. And instead of having a guaranteed player, right, you just have a bunch of picks, and that first round pick isn't going to be like number 11 either. It's going to probably be very late in the 20s again, unless the Rockets vomit all over themselves. So the math doesn't math there. We'll finish this one out.
We feel like going forward, those picks will help us build the team in the future, in a good way.
So the player could have helped you in the future. The picks that you got for him are going to help you in the future, but can't help you in the now, even though you were hoping that they were going to help you in the now, but they can't help you in the now because nobody wanted the picks for the player that you wanted to trade them for. So we're once again looking at the future. And just really quick, Jared McCain was picked 16th overall. Looked like he was the rookie of the year last year until he got hurt. You're looking at a pick that's probably going to be somewhere in the 20s, where there's certainly no guarantee you're going to find a bona fide stud or anybody who's going to be like of a significant aid to this team. And even if you do, the likelihood of that player being somebody who can help you immediately next year is virtually none, right? So it feels like that's a step back. I mean, I could be crazy, but I feel like that does certainly feel like a step back. Am I crazy? Am I missing something here? Not ideal. Now, he also mentioned the first apron, and there were some other clips and some other quotes where he talked about how he wants to have the opportunity to go to ownership and make the case for why acquiring said player is worth paying the luxury tax, which is interesting because it certainly makes you wonder, what is it that you've been doing otherwise? Like, you're not flirting with the luxury tax because it isn't a big enough splash. It isn't a big enough move. You're not willing, your ownership isn't willing to pay the luxury tax to be a team that has a better chance of getting into the playoffs and having a deep playoff run. It has to be for a big splashy player. Is that what I understand? Because, the Sixers have only paid the luxury tax 2 times since Josh Harris and David Blitzer took over the team 14, 15 years ago. They've paid it twice. Here's Daryl Morey talking about that specifically, saying that, ownership's willing to spend. Okay, Daryl, we'll fact check that in real time, but okay, here's Daryl.
For sure, if we had found an ad and we were going to end up higher, we would have ended up above it. We've done it several times when I was here. Over the history of ownership, they've done it many times.
2 times.
We didn't see something that did that, and then we're under the normal pressures that every team is feeling with the CBA, with the first apron to sign Barlow to this deal, things like that.
Okay, Dominic Barlow's a good player. If you're going to try to spin trading Jared McCain as we thought it was better for our team to get a late first-round pick, 3 seconds that we're probably not going to use, and be able to offer Dominic Barlow a full-time contract, that doesn't move me spiritually or basketball-wise. It doesn't. At all. This notion out there that ownership has spent into the luxury tax several times. They haven't. It's been twice in almost 15 years. So no, I wouldn't say twice as several. This is all concerning. This is all just saying it with confidence and hoping that no one fact checks it. Okay. Now, there's one last quote that I thought was really damning. I do. I mean, technically there were 2. Okay. I want to follow up really quickly on this idea of ownership being willing to spend. And I said to you a little bit ago that he had a quote in here somewhere where he said, I want to be able to take to ownership one of these moves that motivates them to go above the luxury tax. Here you go.
I understand the perception, and I hope to defeat it by
This is the perception that ownership won't spend.
Finding a deal that, I can go to ownership and say, we think this move is the right move to do for that, and create the apron issues that it would create. So, but I haven't been able to recommend that move yet.
That was a whole bunch of word salad. I mean, with respect, that's kind of like, we have a plan. There's a tax that you have to pay if you pay the tax, but we have to first decide if there's a move that's worth going into the tax, but we haven't had a move that takes us into the tax. So if we don't have a move that goes into the tax, we can't pay the tax. We can't have a tax conversation. And then at the same time, he had just gotten done saying, well, ownership has been willing to spend into the tax before. So which is it? Pretty clearly, they're not getting the go-ahead to spend into the tax if it's not a big splashy move. I mean, I think that's pretty clear as day. Here's the last thing that I wanted to get to from this whole thing, because this once again comes back to absolute disastrous messaging. Yeah, I could use the word hypocritical a lot, right? Because there's a lot of double talk happening as we present these clips. Remember, Daryl Morey claims the primary reason they traded Jared McCain was they thought the picks they were getting back was selling high and they could take those picks and flip them to another team for a player who could make this Sixers team better this year. Your Honor, I would like to submit to evidence, I think, Exhibit 7, in which Daryl Morey is about to conflict with Daryl Morey.
Yeah, we like our chances in the East. We feel like we're in the mix with the top teams there. Obviously, we got to prove that on the court. But yeah, I'm just reiterating. Yeah, we were hoping to add and we didn't add. So, but we still believe in this team. Like, it's still the team that people believed in. Folks have speculated on the improvements of our East competitors. I don't see it personally. I think all the teams made moves at the deadline, but there weren't any needle movers in my opinion.
Okay. Now, I just have to ask really quickly. Just when he says there were no needle movers, he's referring to one of two things. Either there were no moves being made by teams in the Eastern Conference that are needle movers in terms of anybody's ability to represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. Or did he mean there were no needle movers available? Because if it's the latter, then that would be unbelievably hypocritical. Like, you sold Jared McCain for these picks to try to make a splash for a player who makes you better, and then you're like, oh, there's no needle movers. I have to imagine that's about the conference, right? It has to be, right? It has to be. Now, there was a clip going around. Jared McCain, about an hour ago, spoke to the media in Oklahoma City. And I could play for you the Tyrese Maxey clip. Tyrese Maxey one kind of guts you. But Jared McCain was asked if he expected to be traded from the Sixers. And he said no, among the many things. He did not expect to be traded. The worst part is that Tyrese Maxey kind of laid out what actually happened, what happened when they found out that he was going to be dealt. And Maxey, I'm going to play it for you right here. This is Jared McCain talking about how he found out he was being dealt. And then I'll play for you the Maxey clip in a little bit. But Maxey thought they were joking because the team was together when McCain got traded. Maxey thought that they were joking. They weren't. Here's Jared McCain when asked about whether or not he thought he was going to be traded from the Philadelphia 76ers.
Any feeling that anything was about to happen, or were you doing any picks? Anything?
No, not at all. We were all on the bus to the airport, and I just got a call, and I had no feeling, I didn't think it was gonna happen, to be honest. No, there was nothing, and I got the call and just went and told everybody. I went to Tyrese first, and it was pretty emotional.
Mark talked about how tough that is for you. I mean, how quick did you feel like you had to get over it, or any time you spent like, dang, this sucks?
I think I'm still like, I allow myself to feel all the emotions. It's natural. Give myself grace through this process, but you definitely you move quick. I touched down in LA and then had to come straight here, so it's a little bit of both. I think it's a balance you got to work through, but I'm definitely still going through it and still trying to cope with it.
Any Thunder players?
So that's not reassuring. No one let him know that there was a chance he was going to be dealt. He didn't expect to get dealt. Certainly his teammates didn't expect him to be dealt. And I'm going to throw out to you really quickly, this is the last clip I think I'll play. Because you can go check Instagram and see how McCain's now former teammates reacted to his departure. They're all upset. You want to talk about like the future? You want to talk about the present? Tyrese Maxey is very much your present and your future, as is VJ Edgecombe. But Tyrese Maxey's arguably the most important player on the team. Short term and long term. Maxey's the most important. He's the guy who Ramona Shelbourne put out there earlier this season The Sixers have now kind of pivoted their mindset of Joel Embiid being the guy that they're building around to Tyrese Maxey being the guy they're building around. Well, how did Tyrese Maxey feel about Jared McCain getting dealt? Because, it's been said for a while that they were close. Let's just go out to Tyrese Maxey. Hey, Tyrese, did you expect Jared McCain to get traded?
And it's part of the business, number one. And then number two, man, it's just sad, man. Like, little brother to me, dog. Like, kind of like the first real rook, I guess, rookie vet for me, man.
You know what? I'm actually going to do something here really quick. There's a clip on the bottom of that, and YouTube will flag it. So we're all going to have to listen to that first 10 seconds again real quick. But I have to do this, otherwise I'm going to have to cut an entire segment out of the show on YouTube, and I don't want to do that. Amadeo can add it in back after the fact, but we gotta be careful around these parts apparently. So here, we're going to do this. All right, here we go. Here's Tyrese Maxey on whether or not he thought Jared McCain would get dealt.
Yeah, man, it's part of the business, number one. And then number two, man, it's just sad, man. Like, little brother to me, dog. Like,
Little brother.
kind of like the first real rook, I guess, rookie vet for me, man. It's yeah, I mean, he was emotional and stuff, but I'm happy for him. Hopefully he gets an even better opportunity over there to succeed. And he got a fan in me for life, brother in me for life. So, yeah, I woke up this morning, I was sitting there, I got out the bell, like, man, I ain't going to see J-Mac downstairs, and it's just a little different. It's just,
So that's your most important player. That's your Eastern Conference All-Star starting guard, sounding dejected and upset that the guy that he called his little brother got traded out of nowhere for picks that aren't going to help you this season, and in a move that will make you worse in terms of your depth at guard. Okay, we'll finish this up.
unexpected. That's really all I got to say. Like, you just never know. And again, it's a part of the business. I've been a part of some really, really big trades, you know what I mean? Like, on trade deadline day, probably 2, maybe 3. But yeah, it's different.
Were you guys all together?
Yeah, we was all together on
Here
the
you go.
bus.
Here's the bus.
On the bus, all together on the bus, confused. He came back there and said he got traded, and we was just like, all right, whatever. Like, he was just joking. Mm-hmm. And calls start coming in, and you realize it's real.
So, I'm critical, right? This is what I do. I try to give people credit when they deserve it. I tear down the people who deserve to be torn down. Daryl Morey fucked this up in the worst possible way. This Sixers team just got the punch to the gonads that Paul George was going to be suspended for 25 games, right? And they kind of rallied around their teammate, but it's still a punch to the gonads. They followed that up by a day before the trade deadline, trading away one of their more promising young players. And I get that he didn't look as good this year as he did a year ago. But they traded Jared McCain for picks that will not help them this year. And then you have to turn around and listen to Daryl Morey say, well, we were trying to use those picks to go out and get somebody to help us this year, but it didn't happen. So now those picks will help us in the future. While also saying that part of why they traded Jared McCain is because they thought that he was going to help in the future and not necessarily right now. This is such a disaster. And the real shame of it all is that Jared McCain seemed to embrace Philadelphia, understand what the fans were about, understand the pressure, right? And seemed to be a jovial guy and somebody who helped to bring a little extra joy to that locker room. And you traded him away and made the team worse. This is the kind of move that I would expect from a first-year executive. This is the kind of move I would expect from somebody who has far too much arrogance for having accomplished little to nothing. Kind of like when Nico Harrison dealt Luka Doncic. It was a stupid move. It would be one thing if the Sixers had 2 moves lined up. We're trading McCain for a first and 3 seconds. We're going to then pivot, turn around, and trade those along with Paul George to Milwaukee for Giannis. We're going to take those picks and package them up with something else and go get a player who can come in and be a Paul George replacement short term, right? While he's out, and then can be a helpful depth piece in the playoffs. They made the team worse. And also crushed Tyrese Maxey, crushed a bunch of the younger guys on the team. Again, go look up on Instagram the way that guys said goodbye to the player they referred to as Slime, Jared McCain. You fucked up the vibes and you made the team worse. I thought Daryl Morey's supposed to be like this top-level executive, this guy who everybody has a great relationship with except for James Harden. This is unacceptable. What an absolute colossal fuck up. Legitimately. Horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Now, the one good bit of news in all of this is you have VJ Edgecombe, who's played incredibly well this year, and it does feel like part of their willingness to move off of McCain is because they believe that VJ Edgecombe is overall a better player than Jared McCain. And I think it's hard to argue right now that that's not the case. I think that VJ Edgecombe does have a higher ceiling. I think that VJ Edgecombe right now looks like a better player. But I think Jared McCain was going to be a very valuable, useful player to this team. And I'll also point out, this is the first time Sam Presti, who's been doing like the process of all processes, right? Tearing things down, taking on bad contracts for first round picks, right? Built an absolute juggernaut out in Oklahoma City. It's the first time he's dealt away a first round pick in like a decade. So you got Sam Presti to violate his acquire over handing out first round picks for the first time in a decade. That should scare the shit out of everyone that Sam Presti was willing to part with a first round pick to go get Jared McCain. So there you go. Not great, guys. Not great. Tell you what else isn't great. Let's have a conversation about your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles, and then we'll finish with the Flyers. The Eagles are in the midst of something that I cannot wrap my head around. I have no idea what the Eagles are going to do. Because we had two things come out over the last couple of days. One was specifically about Jeff Stoutland. And I think, you know what, I read the Jeff Stoutland statement over on Snow the Goalie. So I'll bring it up here. But Stoutland went on to Twitter and on to Instagram. He released a statement. And I just want you to note here really quickly, pay attention to who he thanked. And then pay attention to who he didn't thank in this statement. So here's Jeff Stoutland. Helped this Eagles team win 2 Super Bowls. Widely regarded as the best offensive line coach in the National Football League. All right, Jeff Stoutland says, Philadelphia, I've decided my time coaching with the Eagles has come to an end. When I arrived here in 2013, I did not know what I was signing up for. I quickly learned what this city demands, but more importantly, what it gives back. The past 13 years have been the great privilege of my coaching career. I didn't just work here. I became one of you. Stout out. Well, I thanked the city of Philadelphia. He thanked Eagles fans. You know who he didn't thank? Jeffrey Lurie. You know who he didn't thank? Howie Roseman. You know who he didn't thank? Nick Sirianni. See, we could also play. If you want to play devil's advocate, you could say, well, he didn't thank the players either, and he clearly had a good relationship with them, which is true. But you would think that for a guy who got here in 2013, that in the midst of the tweet and the Instagram post would have said, thank you to Mr. Lurie for the opportunity, thank you to Howie, thank you to Nick and to Doug and to everyone else who had me on their staffs, and we won multiple Super Bowls, yada, yada, yada. That was to the fans. And then you add to that there was a bunch of info coming out this week that at some point early-ish in the season, maybe around the bye, Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo went off in a little corner together and figured out some new running plays and figured out some schematic changes to the running game. So much so that reportedly at some point Jeff Stoutland didn't even really want to be known as the running game coordinator because he wasn't being consulted on any of these changes. And you might say to yourself, well, Russ, the Eagles' rushing offense to start the year wasn't ideal. It didn't really get any better, but it wasn't great to start the year, especially coming off a year where Saquon Barkley was, one game away from being able to set the all-time rushing record in a single season, and you would be right. But when you do a real quick macro view of the past season, rather than Nick Sirianni leaning on the guy who's widely regarded as the best offensive line coach in football, rather than lean on a guy who schemed Saquon Barkley into being the now second highest all-time single-season rusher in NFL history. Instead of doing that, he and his dipshit buddy, Kevin Patullo, thought that they knew better and went off and came up with their own stuff. That, by the way, got worse and worse as the season went on. So Nick Sirianni decided he'd rather go with his best pal, Kevin Patullo, and try to figure it out on their own than lean on the guy who has helped make Philly's run game great. Does that make sense to anybody? You wonder why I've been negative about Sirianni. Why last year, not this past season, 2 seasons ago, I openly questioned, like, hey, are they going to start having conversations about potential coaching targets? Now, you can also throw back in my face, well, Russ, don't forget, they came out of the bye that season, and they eventually went on to win the Super Bowl. And you would be right. But let me ask you a question, devil's advocate. The year they won the Super Bowl, Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator. And in 2 seasons where Nick Sirianni's got to appoint one of his own guys to be the offensive coordinator, the team flamed out early against the Bucs in the playoffs, and the offense went absolutely stone cold dead against the 49ers this postseason. So, if the personnel is largely the same, and the offensive coordinator, 1 year, helped get you to a Super Bowl, how much credit do you give to the head coach? I think it's a fair question. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll tell you what I'm really feeling right now. Stoutland leaves. It doesn't sound like it was the friendliest of departures. There was a report that the Eagles expected him to stay with the organization. And at the same time, I can't help but feel like the way that the coaching hires have gone. When the Eagles hired Sean Mannion, were they hiring Nick Sirianni's replacement? Because from everything that we heard once Sean Mannion got hired, right? All of the national media pundits, almost all of them, said that Mannion was on a fast track to be a head coach in this league. Well, if Nick Sirianni can't figure out a way to scheme his team out of the bottom of the league, couldn't do it in 2023, couldn't do it in 2025. If he's supposed to be the offensive mastermind and he can't figure out how to make this offense work, and there were some personality clashes, and now you've pissed off the best offensive line coach in football, so much so that he left, is it fair to wonder whether or not Nick Sirianni is on like the ultimate thin ice? Because I actually think that there's a good chance that that's what we're seeing. Like, I don't think it's insane to think that this could be Sirianni's last year. Like, if this team gets halfway through the season and they're underwhelming and personnel doesn't really change in a meaningful way, I would not be surprised if they moved on. I truly wouldn't. Now, I put that caveat about the changing personnel because, well, we got rocked with a couple of rumors. One was around Lane Johnson, whether or not Lane Johnson was going to come back or not, right? And he's been through a ton of injuries, and it feels like every year there's something that unfortunately just tanks Lane Johnson's season. But this was the concerning one. So this came from Jeff McClain's podcast on Uncovering the Birds. Then Mike Garafolo kind of put one of the things off and said, an offseason of significant change for the Eagles could include Landon Dickerson's uncertain future. McClain mentions that Dickerson's no certainty to return. And then Garafolo says, I've heard some of the same, only 27 and 5 years into his career, but his body has been through a lot. I want to be very clear, right? One of the things I was willing to give some grace on is that Cam Jurgens very clearly played hurt. And I think more than anybody, Landon Dickerson played very hurt last year. We heard the rumblings about a back injury, and then I think there was a knee in there as well. If Lane Johnson were to retire, that's incredibly bad news bears for the Eagles. If Lane Johnson retires and Landon Dickerson retires, good God. I don't know what the plan is at that point. This offensive line 2 years ago was by far the best in the National Football League. They went on and they won a Super Bowl. Last year, injuries hampered this team. I thought that letting Mekhi Becton go was a mistake, and I thought that it was going to ultimately hurt their ability to kind of stem the tide if somebody did get hurt, and I think that came to fruition. But if you somehow lose one or both of Dickerson and Johnson, good God. Like, this whole thing, the window. You know, I always talk about like the window of competing, the window of winning a championship, the window of a dynasty. Like, you can pretty much slam that shit shut. If Dickerson and Johnson both walk into the sunset, like in the next month or so, at least you'll have the ability, I guess, to try to address it in the draft and free agency and try to plug those holes. But if you have to have that much turnover on the offensive line, good God. That's bad, bad, very bad. So there's your Eagles update. It's not a particularly good one. Hopefully Dickerson and Johnson get healthy and they get back to it. Dickerson, I think, is actually, while I agree that Johnson is the most important guy on the offensive line, and if you look at this team's record over the last 7 years, 8 years or whatever, that Johnson has been a starting tackle for them, I get how bad the record is without Johnson. Eventually they will have to move on from him. But Landon Dickerson at 27 years old was viewed as a long-term piece of this line, and if he has to retire early, I mean, it throws everything into a blender. Like, absolutely into a blender. All right, last thing I wanted to get to today. The Philadelphia Flyers. Okay. I don't know what there is to say. I just have like a very basic frustration, right? So the Flyers last night played what was easily one of their worst games of the year. Like, easily one of their worst games of the year. And I would say it was probably up there, top 3 worst games of the season. They had pretty much no point. There was a 4-minute spurt at the end of the second period. And there was like a little flash in the third period. But for the most part, I would say the Flyers were not competitive in like 53 of the 60 minutes of regulation on Thursday night against Ottawa. Ottawa had to play Reimer in goal, the backup, not a very good backup. They missed the net 21 times. They were in single digits in shots, I think, after 2 periods. I mean, it was a piss-poor effort by the Philadelphia Flyers. And so I got thinking, and here you go, K-Dub, 10 shots through 50 minutes. This is a team that's like not even close, right? Like the first half of the season, it felt like they were really getting things going. And you know, I asked Rick Tocchet at the Carnival about, do you feel like Dan Vladar's incredible play in the first half of the year kind of covered up some of the issues with your team? And he said, well, go ask John Cooper about Vasilevsky. Like, yeah, having a goaltender who plays really well probably does cover up some things. But like, man, Vladar last night was fantastic. Like, absolutely fantastic. And they lost 2-1 in overtime. They couldn't get anything going offensively. We've watched for weeks while the offense has been kind of garbaggio. The power play has been Rocky Thompson Horror Show 2.0. Things have been bad. But then I have conversations on Press Row Show or on Snow the Goalie. And on Wednesday, I had brought up to Anthony, hey, just out of curiosity, like, who could they theoretically look to move? And there was a rumor today that Detroit could be interested in Rasmus Ristolainen. And if that is true, Danny Briere has one thing and one thing only to do. Trade Rasmus Ristolainen. I don't give a shit what it's for. I really don't. If you can somehow get a first-round pick for Risto, who can't stay healthy, here's what we're going to do. If you're a Flyers fan, cross your fingers and your Tootsie Toes, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and hope that Rasmus Ristolainen has an incredible Olympics. Because if Risto has a good Olympics, and there are teams out there that will actively think about trading a first-round pick for him as a big, strong, right-shot defenseman, then by God, have at it. Trade Risto. Would be fine. Lower the ceiling, lower the floor. This Flyers team is not good enough. They're not even close to being good enough. Vladar played an incredible game last night. This team looked lost, dazed, confused. They looked like they had no semblance of an offense whatsoever. And really, this year, we haven't exactly seen them light the world on fire. I wouldn't say that you look at this team and say that game in and game out, they're a lot of fun to watch. Offensively, they make you start to wax poetic about how good things will be in 2 or 3 years. Like, it's been a pretty boring team to watch for good chunks of the season. Now, part of them not being boring is that they fall behind in a lot of games, and they've had a lot of come from behind wins. That is true. And some guys have had good seasons. Some guys have taken another step. I'll allow that. But they're not a team that you watch and you start to think about dynamic. Dynamic is a word that I don't ever really think of when I watch the Flyers under Rick Tocchet this season. So if you can somehow get a first-round pick for Rasmus Ristolainen at the deadline that you can either use in the draft, use to move up in the draft, use to go acquire a player in the offseason, then by God, you do it. And you don't worry about having to fill that hole. You don't. Because I'm going to hold Keith Jones to what he said at the Carnival, and I'm going to hold Danny Briere to what he said before the Capitals game. They are looking at this as a long-term plan to build a Stanley Cup contending team. If that is the case, Rasmus Ristolainen doesn't really fit your timeline. Rasmus Ristolainen isn't a necessity for this team. And if you can get a quality asset back for him, you got to do it. You have to. Now I know. I can hear in the distance. I can hear Anthony Sanfilippo somewhere in Delco. Russ, if you trade him, who are you gonna replace him with? It doesn't matter. It genuinely doesn't matter. Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. Because the final 20-something games of this season should be used almost exclusively for the purpose of figuring out who do you want to commit to long-term in this ever-continuing rebuild. That is the goal. That is the point. That is what the next 20-odd games should be. Figure out which of the young guys you think are going to be part of the future and which of the young guys you're going to be willing to move in a draft day trade. That is what the last 20-odd games should be. And if you trade Rasmus Ristolainen, and then that means that Emil Andre, who struggled, will get action every night, and you can make a determination. Is Emil Andre an NHL defenseman or not? Guess what? I love it. Figure it out. Let guys play through tough stretches. Let guys play through rough patches in their season. You're in year 3 of the rebuild. It's okay. It's still okay to let young guys make mistakes. But I'll tell you, one of the things that's odd to me is you have a conversation about, well, guys can play through mistakes, but, Tocchet even said on Snow the Goalie. Well, it depends on what kind of mistakes are being made. Well, let me ask Rick Tocchet this, or the idea of Rick Tocchet. Let me ask this question. Travis Konecny in overtime against the Senators has a 2-on-1 opportunity. The one thing he can't do is miss the net and lead to an odd man rush the other way. 35 seconds or so into overtime, 2-on-1 opportunity. Travis Konecny, who has played his ass off and was named the player of the week over on Snow the Goalie this week. Konecny puts a shot, misses the net. It bangs off the boards, maybe off the glass, leads to an odd man rush the other way, 2-on-1. Stoutland does a nifty, great move, gets it past Vladar. 43 seconds elapse in overtime, and the Flyers lose. Is that a mistake that you have a conversation with the player? Is that a mistake that if the Flyers had a game tomorrow, is that one where you have a conversation with the player? I'm not saying that they would scratch Travis Konecny for it, but we got to be honest. Your Travis Sanheims and your Travis Konecnys of the world have made mistakes in overtimes. They have made mistakes in games that have led to plays going the other way. And I wonder aloud, if it were Matvei Michkov who made that play, what would the comments post-game be? What would the playing time look like in the next game? If Nikita Grabankin committed that turnover in overtime, he'd be benched. Let's be fair, he would be scratched. You got to be willing to let guys play through their mistakes. Tocchet lets the vets play through his mistakes, and we'll find out, hopefully, over the last 20-odd games, how many of the young guys are allowed to play through their mistakes. Or will we see a steady dose of Nick Delorier and Garnet Hathaway, neither of whom are going to help this team long-term, neither of whom really need to play a lot for the rest of the year. The Flyers are in an interesting spot, and now they have roughly 3 weeks until their next game. And we will see whether or not the Flyers front office takes the most recent result and has a realization that this team just isn't good enough. And even if they were to go on a run, they are not going to be a factor in the playoffs. We'll see if that impacts their trade deadline strategy. I would like to believe that if there is a smart deal to be made out there at the deadline, that Briere will make it. And if there is a valuable asset, a first-round pick for Aristo available, for example, might be willing to make it. And if this organization has already decided that, hey, Owen Tippett's not part of the long-term future, and they can get something at the deadline, and they feel like what they can get there is better than in the offseason, I would expect them to at least have a conversation. But I do want to get to, and I forgot where it was at. It was reported by, I got to find it. It was Kyprios. So Nick Kyprios on Thursday said that he heard that the Flyers are willing to swing big, if not now, before the deadline, certainly this summer. When that comes to pass, the biggest pieces they could move out in a blockbuster deal are Owen Tippett and Travis Konecny. I have to wonder, on a human level, for Travis Konecny, he likes being here. He likes playing here. Travis Konecny gets to the city, has a young family. But he did say after a game this past week, I'm sick of missing the playoffs. If he looks around and he listens to Jonesy's comments, to Danny's comments, does he say to himself, you know what? Now might be the time to try to get to a team that can be a playoff contender, go to a team that can be a Stanley Cup contender. And if the Flyers move off of Konecny, I'm going to wish the guy nothing but the best. He's been a good soldier for this team. He's been a good representative of the organization. I don't think there has ever been, scandal or anything resembling it put out there in the public about Konecny. He's been a good rep for this team. I hope he ultimately does find a place where he gets to win. Will they be willing to move? I don't know. Will he be willing to move to whichever team offers the best opportunity? I don't know. Owen Tippett to me is a guy that I just don't see the fit. Somebody might be able to explain it to. I don't see the fit. But we'll see. Okay. I think that's it. I think that's what I've got for you guys today. So to recap, Daryl Morey, terrible press conference. Stoutland offended. Dickerson and Johnson may be retiring. And the Flyers lose going into the Olympic break. Here's the last thing I wanted to get to, and has nothing to do with Philly sports, and this is where I say to the people who maybe have kids in the car or kids watching the show, now might be an okay time for you to come back to the show a little bit later on. Because again, there's nothing wildly inappropriate being said here. Unlike somebody at Phoenix Area High School who said something wildly inadvisable, and boy, am I glad I am not a union rep there this week like I used to be. No, there was something very, very interesting that was reported over at The Athletic. And so I want to get to that, and I'll, give a salute to the people who were here and, had to go or will come back or whatever. But if you've been keeping up with the Olympics, you may have seen this report, and it is one of the wildest reports, one of the wildest headlines, one of the wildest everything you'll ever see. And this is what gets you ready for the Olympics. From The Athletic, reports have surfaced before the Winter Olympics that allege ski jumpers are injecting their penises with hyaluronic acid to fly further. The World Anti-Doping Agency has vowed to investigate. And you say to yourself, why would you inject acid into... Anyway, what is the acid? What is that? No, we don't need to know all the specifics. They're injecting acid into their members to fly longer and higher. Okay. And then you say to yourself, why would that matter? Well, we have this wonderful graphic that also came from The Athletic and the New York Times, right? So apparently there are ski jumpers, Olympic ski jumpers, injecting acid into their Magic Johnsons so that they get measured for their ski jumping suits, and there's a larger surface area to cover up with fabric, and that by doing that at their fittings or whatever, once that acid presumably passes from their tubular meat, then they are able to have a little bit of extra fabric that just kind of flops and flaps in the wind. Why does that matter? As you can see in this graphic, if athletes use this acid in their penile region, or some were reported to have potentially put clay in their undie pants, if athletes enlarge that area of their genitalia when they're getting fitted for their suits, that will lead to ultimately excess material when things are back to normal. That excess material can create a sail-like effect. You can't have a suit that's more than 4 centimeters larger than the surface area of the body. So that excess material is really hard to come by, and it's also very impactful because, as you can see in the graphic, For every 2 centimeter increase in suit size circumference, your lift increases by 5%. That's equivalent to an extra 5.8 meters in jump length. So, I mean, there's lift. That you get extra lift. That fabric is flapping in the wind. You get extra lift, and it potentially gets you almost 6 extra meters. So I don't know who told you size doesn't matter, but there you go. Apparently it does, at least when you're getting fitted for a ski jumping suit. Amadeo says that has to be one painful passage through the tubular meat. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty gross. It feels very, very upsetting. Very upsetting. Okay. There you go. That's the end of today's show. Now, the Super Bowl's on Sunday. You might be wondering to yourself, Russ, who do you want to win the Super Bowl? I don't really care. I don't. I don't think I've ever cared less about a Super Bowl than I do this one. It's been a long time since I've been like this checked out on caring about a Super Bowl. On one hand, I could say Seattle. Sam Darnold passed over. Sam Darnold's had a good year. Seattle's defense is a lot of fun to watch. Or I could go with the Patriots, who I inherently don't like because they're a New England sports team. They're affiliated with Boston in some way. I don't like them. But I do like Mike Vrabel. And that's where I struggle. Because on a human level, I would have a beverage with Mike Vrabel. I don't dislike Mike Vrabel. I actually don't dislike the Patriots, the actual team themselves, the guys on the team. I don't dislike them at all. And I don't know, do I want the Pacific Northwest to have a Super Bowl? Like, I don't know. I guess I just want a good game. I think that's what I want, is a good game. If Seattle wins, I won't be upset. If New England wins, I won't really care. I hope that wherever you spend your Super Bowl Sunday, I hope you have a great time. I hope you spend it with family and friends, or family or friends. And if you're sitting there by yourself and you're wondering, what the hell should I do? I don't care about this game. The quick answer is like, share, and subscribe to The Russ Joy Show on YouTube. And if you like podcast apps better, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. I'll be back on Monday. We can recap the Super Bowl. We'll have any updates about the Flyers, the Sixers, the Phillies, the Eagles, maybe even the Philadelphia Union will do something. Who knows? And maybe we'll get into the best Olympic events to have happened by Monday. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Enjoy the Winter Olympics. And I will talk to all of you on Monday. Until then, this has been the Russ Joy Show. And I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. And it's also the name of the show. Let's try to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the weekend. That would be a lot of fun. Help a guy out. Share the video with someone else. Talk to all of you on Monday. Bye now.